and today I'm chatting with Jeremy Snowden, and I will let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Snowden, and for the last 6 or 7 years, I've operated a men's retreat twice a year, both in the fall and the spring in the beautiful Ozark Mountain area.
Awesome. That's so cool. Um, and what got you first started with retreats? I think you have a coaching business,
Mhm.
and how did you get into, we say, into the coaching aspect of it first of all, and then what made you go into retreats?
Yeah, one of your guests, I've listened to two previous podcasts, and they were wonderful. She talked about how, the healing is found in the pain, if you will, or the healer is found in the pain. And I guess
Mm,
it'd be similar in my case. I was a business professional, and all of a sudden the wheels came off of my life. Got divorced, and all that ensued. And I began to feel stuck, just unmotivated, just hopeless. Felt like I was going to sleep and sleeping to wake up to go again, only to go back to
mm,
sleep. It was just this treadmill, if you will, and just struggling with a lack of direction and purpose in life. And that stressful state just led to just plummeting productivity, frayed relationships, unhealthy coping mechanisms. It just left me
mm,
adrift, and I was just ineffective. And what I discovered was I was going through an existential drift, or existential vacuum, as the philosophers talk about. And that kind of had me to just really question those things of what I should be, right? I mean, I thought it was a circumstantial issue, Eileen, but it was really a philosophical issue. It was the glasses of which I was looking out of the world at, and then bringing perception back to, to what I thought that it was. And I had to question notions that were they were just basic. Obviously, this is how it is. And I'll just give you a
mm,
couple of them that I think that are
mm,
like I could highlight here. Like, one is always be emotionally strong, and never showing vulnerability as a man. It's like,
mm,
who came up with that? And where's that in the rule books?
mm,
And being consistently competitive and assertive, and got to be alpha or you're beta, and et cetera. It's like, well, who says that? How do we know that those are just not labels that people have put on us, and impose those on us? Be naturally good at sports and physical activities. It's creating this ubermensch of a person that we should be, a superman, if you will, or superwoman, of expectations of what other people would have us to be, as opposed to being true to our authentic selves. And I say our and us, but it was really me and I, right, at the time. And
mm,
and then my background my faith as a Christian, just these self-imposed and other imposed expectations of what that was supposed to look like for me. Attending church every Sunday, avoid having close friendships with non-Christians, or avoid secular entertainment, or vote for a specific political party because that's what we do. All of these different things that just were never questioned. It was just, this is the way it is. Those glasses that I've had. I love, there's a uh, entertainer of past, who, his name's Dick Gregory, and he talks about that. He says, what's dangerous is when the universe picks you and you put on those
mm,
magical glasses. He says that there's rules that go with them. You can never take them off, and you can never see
mm,
things as they're, air quote, supposed to be. You see things as they really are, and you can never force anyone else to wear them.
mm. Yeah. And this, you can't force anyone to wear them. And
Mhm.
that's so hard for a lot of people who have them on. But to the person, what would you say to the person who has them, who hasn't put them on yet, and they're a little bit intimidated? They're perhaps comfortably working along where, like as you described, go to sleep, to get up, to go to work, to come home, to go to
Mm,
sleep, to get up. And they're kind of like wondering what what is out there, not sure, and they haven't kind of perhaps reached a level of discomfort that
mhm.
you're kind of pushing to, that you know you have to get, like everyone kind of has to get, and they're like staring at the glasses and they haven't picked them up yet. Like,
Yeah,
what do you what do you say to them? Because it's like you can't put them on their face, they have to pick them up. But like,
yeah,
yeah, I find just walk away from them and let them do. But what would
sure.
you say to them right now if they were listening to you talk?
Yeah,
And
so
you know,
the first thing is, and I'll just have to take you back 20 years ago. I remember visiting with my best friend now. He was a pastor at the time, my pastor, if you will. And sitting down with him, I said, I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. Just feel damned. And so the thing with that, with the glasses that we talked about, it's when the foundation beneath you begins to shift, you can double down, which I did, double down, but no amount of,
mm,
prayer or hoping or trying to push and make it happen was working. And finally, you begin to surrender. Just
mm,
let it go. Not hold on to trying to replace it, not trying to fight it, realizing that things are the way that they are. And you're seeing clearly and begin to trust yourself too. That's a scary one.
mm, yeah. So it's like
Mhm.
put on the glasses. They're kind of all, once you know the glasses are there, it's too late. Yeah. That like the discomfort. Some people can be very stubborn, I think, I'm not someone that works with people or coaches people or anything like that, but I just see
Mm.
them in life, and I'm like, yeah, you enjoying yourself.
Mm.
Um, and it's a really way to look at it. It's a really cool way to look at it, that it's already happening, and you just kind of have to get comfortable with being damned if you do.
Mm.
Um, and something I didn't know much about, and it's a bit of an odd topic nowadays, is the religious part of things for you, and
Mm.
how you kind of bring that with you in life. Like, do you have, because we say like all of the restrictive parts of religion and what you do to, how do you cope with all of that, I suppose?
Yeah, and it turns out that I wasn't damned at all. It turned out
Oh.
that, that's just not how love works, you know.
Mm,
It's how
mm,
we work, that parent-child dynamic where you want to keep your child safe from fire. And so maybe you lie to them,
mm,
about the nature of fire or how easy it is for everything to, go into flames. And what if you, hurt yourself? And, it's like we impose fear as guidelines to help, and which is fine, in a faith or in a religion. But the
mm,
challenge comes when you start seeing the inconsistencies in it. And then you have to ask yourself, do I tear everything down, or do I just simply disorient and reorient in a way that makes sense for me? And so, I think that that's important, is to not, I talked about surrendering. Surrendering isn't pushing against the old establishment of how I thought things were. I could have spent, I really had a choice, right? I could spend time just being anti everything that, my denomination or my particular brand was, or I could go to, like I like to say, I just took everything off the table and then placed things back on the table that resonated with my heart, the center of who I am.
mm,
And so I think that's important, is to do an inventory and an introspection, because it's really about the story that we're telling ourselves about what's happening. And that story comes from our culture, from our society, and is imposed on us at a very young age. And we enact it even when we're grown, full grown, and yet we are um, auto programmed to see things a specific way. But when we stop, gaze at the bridge of our nose, and go inward, well, how would I really feel about that? what's really the answer here? And it takes time. It's self-inquiry. It takes love for yourself, respect for yourself, no longer insulting your intelligence for the sake of just getting along to going along. And journaling has been a very big part of that for me.
Journaling. Journaling.
Mhm.
That's yeah. Because I was going to say, like, that would be a big challenge for a lot of you know, to to turn inwards. Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of people would struggle with that and the stuff, like as you said, to self-respect and self-love and
Mhm.
that was journaling the way through that for you and talk a bit more about that. That's not something I ever do actually. Journaling is a
Mhm.
kind of a weak point for me.
You know how I, yeah, and you know how I talked about, the self-imposed and other imposed expectations, it's like with journaling, it's the same thing. It's like, well, why do I have to do it in a 3 point,
Mm,
sentence structure and all that stuff? It's like dismantle all those notions, especially when I'm talking to myself. Again, are you supposed to talk to yourself? Well, I don't know how it is there, but here in the United States, it's like you don't talk to yourself because that means you're crazy. But it's like we can write, and writing is a form of that self-reflection and talking to yourself. Sometimes I take my thought on a walk. So I identify and take one thought and then go around my loop around the lake and just hold on to it. And so, invariably, all of us, right? As a yoga teacher, I try to explain that when you push away a thought, it has twins. You know, it simply has
mm.
twins on you.
So yeah,
Uh,
you're not, yeah, pushing away a thought. That's like where you,
mm,
what you mean, do you mean where you like ignore it or like just, yeah,
yeah,
and then it comes back again with like double the force. And
exactly.
so, yeah,
So
yeah.
instead, when I'm walking and I'm let's just say what's the essence of all existence? Let's just say I took that big one on a walk, right? I know I'm not going to finish it with anything besides maybe a couple of sentences that I can write down and think about. But what will invariably happen is I'll be like, did I turn off the air fryer before I left home? You know, oh no,
Yeah.
I better start walking faster and it's like, wait a second, there I am, being the victim of the situation instead of just grabbing the reins of my mind and steering it
Mm,
back. So when I'm able to steer it back to, well, I was talking about the philosophical underpinnings of all existence. Let me get back there, But it could be something a lot more simpler than existential, philosophical things. It could be, things like, where am I at with regards to the place that I work? Does it still resonate with me? And so, and that's practical. We're thinking, you're thinking, processing through that, and all of a sudden you're thinking, well, is that my tire on my right hand side of the passenger is kind of low. I wonder if I have a puncture in my tire. That fear just comes up, and while that's a valid thought, it's not when you're taking your thought on a walk, right? It's new business in your business meeting with yourself, right? So instead, I will redirect that. Just again, I didn't know that I had in the past. I just thought I was a victim to my circumstances, but it was really a philosophical problem that I'm not a victim to my circumstances. I can direct my awareness of my own thoughts, and that helps me to navigate through my circumstances, Uh, and
yeah.
so
Not, yeah. That's so
go ahead,
cool.
go ahead.
No, I like that sentence, the navigating your circumstances where you get that a lot where you're like even I know like the big thoughts and the thoughts where you're like intentionally taking yourself for a walk, but even say for the person who's driving to work or like like their normal day-to-day parts of life, getting the kids ready for school, going to work. Um, like you might hit the same thought process every morning, like sitting in traffic, giving out
Hmm.
about, XYZ,
Hmm.
the same conversations on the radio, just a different sound. Um, and to be able to arrest the thought in the moment and not let it take you for a walk,
Hmm. Yes.
that the reverse. Um, that's really interesting. I hadn't ever looked at it that way. I kind of like to do something similar where I just put it down and stop annoying yourself thinking about it, thinking about
Mm,
traffic, stop annoying
yeah.
yourself, but yeah, take ownership of it and decide that you're gonna um change it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And what? So you had a career change. You were working in, say, the corporate world, and um, like there's 100 different places you could end up if you leave the corporate world. But you ended up in, you were saying, yoga instruction, and then this kind of mentoring, kind of counseling work that you
Mm-hmm.
do with people. And what led you to that as opposed to, I don't know, becoming a farmer or,
Hmm.
you know, something
Yeah.
different, something else? What led you to, we all know why leaving the corporate world is like a breath of fresh air, but you kind of bounced into, we'd say, the mentorship and the coaching and stuff.
Yeah. So one of the questions, and again, I know that it's same English, but we express things differently than over across the pond. But you guys could probably do the same thing. You go into a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a network mixer, you know,
Mm,
had my little what, my business card and and all that. And people ask you, so what do you do for a living?
mm-hmm,
And when they're
mm-hmm,
asking that to you, when they're asking you, what do you do for a job? And then a lot of times, subconsciously, I think more than anything else, they're trying to see if you fit, in their social circles, in their networking circles, or if they should move on, you know. And it used to bother me so much because there are so many different other aspects of life than just, your income statement. And
mm-hmm,
if I'm being reduced to my income statement, then my worth is tied to success in that endeavor and picking the right thing. You know, we put a lot of pressure on our 18-year-olds, especially when they graduate from high school or secondary school, right? What are you going to do with your life? And what 4-year commitment are you going to make to be educated in a specific direction that's going to traject you for the next 40 years of work? And it just seems counterintuitive, to how we're doing. And a lot of times, again, because of social expectations and impositions, they're going to give us the canned answers that they want, that we want to hear, and they're going to
mm,
direct their lives based on what we want to hear. And so when people used to ask me, what do you do for a living? I stopped saying, well, I'm a property and casualty insurance agency owner, for, this particular area, been in business for this long and blah, blah, blah. What they wanted to hear was my LinkedIn, verbiage. And I started saying, well, I hike, I cycle, I do yoga, I play guitar, I sing, I read and write poetry and hang around the campfire with my bonfire with my friends and family. What do you do for a living? And they would just look at me like blank stare.
yeah, the poor, you did not fit in a box, so they don't know the computer has broken.
Mm,
They, I imagine you got a little bit of a, but yeah, you got the little bit of a blank stare. But did anyone like crack out of their box and say, "Oh, I love, hiking as well," or do you ever go fishing? Was there any sort of reaction, or was it very, very in the box?
no, right. It typically varied. Sometimes I had to explain to them that we are human beings, not human doings, you know. But
Mm,
a lot of people, as soon as I say, they ask, what do you do for a living? And I say, I hike, cycle, read, write poetry, yoga. They'd be like, ah, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
That's what gives me life, right? And so then it turns the conversation for me to ask immediately, Eileen, what do you do for a living? And instead of getting back, well, I'm a certified public accountant with 14 years of experience. I've worked at this place and that place, and we've grown from this to this based on my contributions. They start saying, I like art.
Mm.
I like playing with my grandkids. And it opens them to be more heart centric instead of just always, brain centric.
Mm.
Mhm,
That sounds really cool, actually. I was just
mhm,
thinking about that now. If every chamber of commerce in the world had that kind of people working there, wouldn't that be a very different way of doing commerce or
mhm,
governance or whatever way you want to say it, where people like they're only, it's like as you said, you're only taught to be valuable because you
mhm,
were at 18, you were given we were given 10 years of education in this structure, and then you were to be tested on how well you can maintain the structure.
mhm.
And then you're an adult and you're all maintaining the same structure. And it's like the structure has definitely some values, but
Sure.
we can, we can interject the structure and create a new one, you know? Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be fun?
Yeah. And so the outcome of that, if you will, is just this freeing feeling of being able to live life instead of just be lived. Because you
Mm,
because you look around and you're like, okay, I know I'm busy and I'm going to work, but um, look at this, this mother and these kids that don't have a place to live, and you're just like, well, I've
mm,
got to go, and so and I'm not saying that we should have to stop for every single thing that happens in our lives, but we end up just not even living our lives. We're just placing everything on autopilot. And what
mm,
I discovered was, you asked about the transition. I kind of went on a little bit of a tangential conversation, but you know, um, I realized that a lot of those things, I'm good at talking to people, about insurance policies and coverages and all of that stuff. But it really was that I was good at talking to people. Like I can appreciate going to your home, going to a client's home, and looking around and just saying, well, that's fascinating, and just authentically, genuinely, that's fascinating how you guys have done that mantle like that. It's amazing. And I can see what that means to you and your family as you have your family crest here, you have this, and that, and the other. Seems like you beautifully represented your family right here. And it's a great reminder when you get up in the morning, and I realized that that's the cross section of what I'm good at, is
mm,
helping people to identify what they've done, and to be able to see the symbolism that's coming out of their heart, not just I've made this aesthetically pleasing, or
mm,
whatever.
mm,
Um, uh, so I started working with coaches and reading and philosophical treatises, et cetera, trying to figure out, okay, well, first off, what's life about then? If I'm not just embracing a heaven to embrace and a hell to shun, and there are other aspects of life and the purpose of life, I had to grapple and clasp some of that, which I won't go into right now, but um, and then I had to say, well, what does this mean I want to do with the rest of my life? They say we have about 4,000 weeks of existence, and a lot of us just live the same year, 75 years, 80 years in a go at it. And only at the end to realize that we didn't want to spend all that time at the office that we missed with our friends and family, etc. And
mm,
in midlife, I decided, hey, I don't want to do this. And I had a series of emotional resets, if you will, that have
mm,
just really just it kind of guides you when you surrender. There's a guidance that happens, and it's almost unmistakable, And on hard days, on hard times, I'm like, if somebody asks me, hey, would you do it all over again? I'm like, no, I won't. I wouldn't do that. But in the ultimate scheme of things, zooming out 4,000 weeks, it's absolutely.
mm. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the that's the thing. Like you don't realize how fast it's gone. There's another week gone, and
Yeah.
that's your 4,399. Um, you can get rid of 300 and like 300 weeks really quickly. And
Hmm.
they don't come back.
Right.
It's not a subscription service. You can't cancel and restart it again. It's not Netflix.
Right.
Um,
Right.
um, and you said something there about um the resisting, to not resist it, and to kind of, how would you, if someone is sitting listening to us talking and they're like, what would you say about someone who's having difficulty letting go of the resistance?
Mm-hmm. The big thing is self-inquiry. One of the things that was really helpful for me was these, the different tests that we take, right? So there's, and I've never done the Enneagram, but are you familiar with the Enneagram? It's a,
The Enneagram.
framework, right?
Yeah.
Or Myers-Briggs is another one,
Hmm.
right? Person. And then the Ocean, Big Five: open, conscientious, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. It's a scientifically based, backed um, uh, test where it gives you insights into ourselves. That whole, back on the Temple of Delphi, there was an inscription. And it's like thousands of years old, and it's just two words. Does it say obey your parents? No. Does it say, don't spit and don't, chew gum and walk? No. Does it say don't cuss? No. It says know thyself.
Mm.
Know
Mm.
yourself. So these ancient Greeks, they could put anything there on that structure, inscribing it into the granite, marble, whatever it is, and that's what they put. Know yourself. Self-inquiry is so important because when you realize, no, I really don't like, going to family reunions and having to genuflex on all of these different, historical and background things that don't resonate with me anymore. And I don't like that my sibling or my mother or whatever still sees me as little this. And, they don't see the growth because I've had to go on my own journey and come back. Or they don't respect the growth, that I've had to take.
Mm.
It's when you're able to put those pieces together from the self-inquiry, from inside out, instead of the self-imposed externals and trying to line up with them and just then evaluating yourself based on that. Who are you? What are you about? What are some of the things you delight in? And learning that, we all know nowadays, we all know that whether we're extrovert or introvert or introverted extrovert, and all of that. So it's great, but there are other tests that we can take that
Mm.
help us to do that. Also, working with a coach or a counselor or a therapist, or
Mm.
qualified mentors or whatnot. There's loads of information, but we just seem to live on autopilot instead of looking at it. But there's a saying that is, when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same, that's when we move.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Pain, the pain. Um, and yeah, so this is something that is becoming more and more acceptable nowadays. This place where you're like working with a coach or a therapist, or
Mhm,
like there's all different ways of like you can go and do a cacao ceremony or the ayahuasca ceremonies in
mhm,
other parts of the world, to where I live anyway. But
mhm,
or it can be as simple as joining, like for example, like your 30-day program just on your phone,
mhm.
and just being a bit more engaged with yourself every day. But what I wanted to ask was, because this is the podcast name is it's based on basically retreats, people who do
Sure,
retreats. And what do you find um people, so when you have your retreat participants, what is it that they have what's most valuable for them about doing a retreat?
sure. Um, so, this is just based on my personal experience. And it's it's less about what I do and more about them, their experience. So first off, we're in nature, and this is all guys, right? So we're in nature, and our wives are not there, our partners are not there, our our circle of concern or circle of influence, in the community aren't there. Generally it's 100
Mm,
miles or more away from, our where we live and do life at. And so it allows us to take off that that first layer of ego, if you will, and set it to the side. Uh, and I noticed a shift, and I've got a bonus son, and he's 7, and he can talk to anybody, like anybody, right? And
yeah.
like I remember being 7 and sliding with, having blue jeans on with holes in the knees and sliding over and being like, that's a cool car. Can I hold it? And so the other boy would be like, with just pride, there was no pretension, there was no mortgage, there was no assessment on whether you were good enough to hang out with me or anything. It was just like, yeah, and the doors open on the side and the hood opens. And I got this from my grandma who, blah, 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 gives you the story about it. Well, then we go into a phase of self-preservation, right? You get into high school and all of a sudden it's my girlfriend, it's, my influence, my this and that and the other. And then oh, wow, cool car. Can I see it? Just goes away, and so
Mm,
going to being in retreat, or we start Thursday night for dinner, and then a bonfire, just an opening ceremony. We do some ice cold immersion inside of a natural lake, and some people choose not to do it, and that's completely fine. It really is about being yourself, saying no to things that you don't want to do. I'm not interested in journaling today. It's not what I'm going to do. Just allowing you to have your personal experience while you're experiencing and engaging with other people as well. And
mm,
so uh, other things that are really crucial to people are just the conversations that happen around the fire. They say that, you know, uh, when when we talk to each other, there are some walls that don't come down. And I like to use the analogy of my friend. He talks about when we sit across from each other, that's fine. But when we're shoulder to shoulder, it's a different experience. As men, we had to be soldiers way back in the day and fight as a unit, right? And you only got a glimpse of the person on your side, for the most part, while you were actually in the trenches of war. But you had to do your part. But just knowing that he's standing there on either side of you
mm,
helps you to continue in the cause. And so in our lives, what we need is that support, that fundamental support, and to know that we're okay. Here we no longer have like rites of passages like our ancestors did, where it's like,
mm.
well, now you are a man. It's like, well, now it's like, hey, can you drink more than me? Can you drink alcohol more than me? Now you're a man.
Yeah.
You had a child, you're a man, you know. But what we need is an intrinsic, both external and internal, just sense of that. And I think that comes with you're sitting among other men and you're acceptable. So all the challenges, oh, well, you like cross stitch, you must not be a man. Or you like poetry, there's no way that you can be a man, or whatever. All these different delimiters are pushed out because you're sitting among men. And the
Mm,
things that we discuss, I mean, I have a general frame, but it's really less is more. If Jeremy shuts up, things begin to happen and people begin to talk about what their desires are, what direction they want to take the next 6 months before returning. And then also with that, we have, a text group, just asynchronous communication. So if somebody has questions, like one of our friends, he's like, "Hey guys, I don't know how to remodel my downstairs." Now, his toilet, right? So his bathroom. Now
mm,
he could just YouTube it, but that's one direction. But bi-directionally, for the contractors to say, hey, these are some things that you're going to have to be concerned about. You guys have any codes or issues there? And to get that feedback from not from me, but from the group, and just that cohesion is really important. And then I'll say this at the risk of just going long with my answer here, Eileen. Uh,
Okay.
100 years ago, approximately 100 years ago, there was a research that was done at a plant in Hawthorne, Illinois. And so they call it the Hawthorne effect, right? Basically, it
Mm.
was a small, manufacturing of telephones of some sort when we used to make phones, right? And they would, be putting them together, and then all of a sudden, these researchers come and they're examining the lights, the lighting in the room. And so, as an employee, you're looking up and finding out, what are these people doing? And you see them examining other aspects of work life, and you hear whispers and gossips of what's going on. And somebody says, oh, they're researchers, they're trying to examine to know what to do to help us to become more efficient as employees, as a company. And you're like, oh, cool. And so they change the lighting, they adjust the ambient lighting, maybe 2 lumens or whatever. And um, all of a sudden they noticed that there was a correlation, that there was an increase of productivity. It began to just to increase, maybe even double digits. So then they were like, well, this is encouraging. So they would change the hours, the shifts for people, and they would adjust the shifts as far as their work times. And when they did that, the production didn't go down; it went up, and it kept going up. But then they said, wait a second, something else is going on here, right? So that's for that double blind testing, where they lowered the ambient background lighting, and they realized that productivity continued to soar. And something's broke here. Something is broke. And so, as psychologists do, kind of get those metrics to be able to, weed out um, any artifacts. They discovered that people were becoming more productive because they were being watched. They were
Mm.
being
Mm.
observed.
Yeah. It
And a lot
wasn't.
of us just need to
Yeah.
be observed,
Yeah.
witnessed.
Yeah. Yeah. This makes sense. And yeah. 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 You're not just like you're not just another person standing in the room. You're there's like when you see someone paying attention to you, noticing you, then yeah, you become more aware of what you're doing and how you're working. You're not just
Yeah.
stacking shelves in a
Yeah.
supermarket. Now the
I've
modern
got,
time.
yeah. Well, um, uh, I've got the youngest grandbabies are the same age as my bonus son, 7, you know, and
Mm,
he and his sister to an extent, so 7 and 9. We'll go to the park and they'll say, and it just warms my heart every time. So I'm getting a little emotional here, but they'll say, Grandpa Jeremy, watch this. And they'll get
mm,
on the slide and they'll just come down in that wavy slide, and I'll just be like, whoa. But who does that for us nowadays? I mean, when people are observing you, you feel like they're judging you, not
mm,
witnessing your journey. They're judging us. But who
mm-hmm.
said no? And we're too proud, right? Watch me. We're not going to say that, right? A child will say that, but we won't say that. But nonetheless, it still is foundational that we're witnessed in our journey.
Yeah, yeah. And that is a lot of that's the groups, the retreats, the coaching, just having a
Hmm.
coach. And sometimes, yeah, that's very interesting. It's a different perspective to what I'd ever looked at it. Like your coach isn't there to fix you either. Sometimes they're there just so you know that someone is with you. Like if you look at athletes and even like boxers, they all have a coach,
Yeah.
and you wonder
Hmm.
sometimes why they have a coach. Like they're the best boxer in the world, or
Right.
the tennis player Roger Federer, he has a coach. He
Hmm.
does not need a coach.
Hmm.
He's his best friend, and they just kind of they kick about playing tennis. That's all they
Yeah.
do. But yeah, um,
Yeah.
just the having being observed, yeah,
Hmm.
being witnessed, I suppose. Yeah, watch me. Um, I'm gonna change the direction slightly. I'm gonna ask you slightly. It's a tangential question, as we
Hmm.
as we do nowadays. A lot of the people that listening to this podcast probably be would hopefully be people similar to you who are looking at or are already running retreats. And it does sound to me like you genuinely do run your retreats and you have a very strong basis for where your retreats are going when you run them, and you're very engaged with them. But what would your advice be to someone who's perhaps doing some coaching and one-to-ones and is struggling to run retreats or struggling to even give it consideration? They're maybe not totally confident in start like picking a date and getting going. Um, what would your advice be? Kind of.
Don't go it alone.
Okay. Okay.
You remember I talked about my friend of over 20 years, who I said, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. Well, he's been a constant witness of my journey and making sure I don't damn myself. He and I established this uh, men's group and of just support and accountability pre-COVID, right? We were on Zoom and doing book discussions every Monday night for the last almost 7 years now.
Mm,
Just personal development around things that we are really interested in. And then we're like, we need to do something with this. And so starting in what, 2018, we decided to, get some people together away from, the influences of everything. And what I really like is the fact that their wives, their partners are like, go, do it, go have a great time. And, we cook together, we hike together, we bonfire together, we laugh,
mm,
and it's just like it's refreshing and a lot of and I'm tangential here, but I'm going to get back to your point. But a lot of people don't have that, so it's not there's any scarcity. There's only a certain amount of people that really appreciate, all this and that. There's tons of us, you know. There are so many men I see in men's group on socials and forums. Like, how do I even connect with people in my community? Well, by doing things that your heart resonates with. If you're a hiker, well, you can go on meetup.com and find hikers in your area. If you're a
mm,
cyclist or if you're, any of that stuff, if you're a history person, and they may not look like what we think that they should. Going back to my best friend, it's like our kids are still at different ages, right? His kids were, like 5 years, 8 years younger than mine. And so one of the concerns at the time as parents with my spouse and I was, man, I mean, Lisa and Corey are great, but their kids are just so much younger that our kids will just end up, kind of feeling like left out, or their kids might end up feeling left out or whatnot.
mm,
But so it may not look like what you think it will look like when you first start, or to the people that you think it would. But it's just about just consistently just trying and failing. It's about the failure more than it is the success. Success doesn't happen without those series of failures. And to capstone that, here now, 20 years later, uh, me and one of the young men, who's my best friend's son, are hanging out, going for a hike, or grabbing a
yeah.
beer together. It's like had I just found people that were just like me, or what I thought was supposed to be my people, my tribe, I would have missed
Mm,
out on tremendous blessings that are now generational.
yeah. 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 That's so cool.
So don't go it
So
alone and and fail forward. Very important.
fail forward. That's
Hmm.
like that's like keep try, even if it doesn't succeed, try again. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. And so it kind of leads into the one of the questions I had in my head for you, which was um failing and difficulties with the business and the retreat space. And what has been one of the more difficult aspects of your retreat business and your coaching business? Like, what would you have a story about that? Is there any kind of difficulty that you're like dealing with that is,
Yeah, so
okay.
nurturing that relationship. Like, usually, like the way I look at it is if people are going to jump on a call with me, there's a large, it's not like my regular sales, air quote, sales ratio, right? In insurance, ratio is about 20%.
Hmm.
Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. Thank you for getting on the call with me today, going over this, and going through all the points and then, some will, some won't. You got to keep going. You got to hit your 20, to get 100, 20 people, you have to call 100 and blah, blah, blah. It's a little
Hmm.
different. When somebody gets on the phone with me, my goal is not to say, well, look at my testimonial page, look at and see our success rate and this and that and the. It's it's found in the Bible. There's a proverb that says, "The purpose of a man's heart is a deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out." So
Hmm.
rather than trying to explain my process and my program, my offerings and my all of that, I'm asking what in the past 5 years has worked that you're not doing right now.
Okay.
After asking what brings you here, it's asking that question and then everything unfolds by itself. So the challenge has been getting people on that call. And I'm working with a very competent, amazing marketing person that is helping me to develop that touch
Yeah.
point, Eileen. So and that's where the critical issue is. It's, I'm 1 out of 8 billion. Why should they listen to me? But when they connect with me in a meaningful way, it's almost
Hmm.
a done deal, if you will.
Because like exact yeah, that's what I hear a lot with like with clients because it's basically what I do in this space. I connect the dots, I connect the people, and I hear a lot of that.
Hmm.
Like if they've come to talk to you, um, you're very comfortable that they're in the right place, and
Hmm.
you're. It's not like yeah, it's not like sales calls where you have to call 100 people to get your 20. Generally, the 20 people that have arrived at your door or on your computer screen nowadays
Hmm.
are there for you. But there's just such the barrier is just enormous.
Hmm.
And that's been the place that I've put myself into that gap of like the constant changing algorithms and the constantly new platform. It was Facebook for 10 years and then it became like five other ones shot up in the space of a couple of years. And then there's like an entire industry built around connecting people via social media. And yeah, there's a whole there's a whole wave of that aspect of things that are just I think for everyone it's a it's a it's a it's a bottleneck, we'll call it a bottleneck, where it's like
Hmm.
how do I get through this narrow space and out into the next bit.
Hmm.
Well, like as we've been working on, it's just make a plan
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
take step by step. And like when you've no idea what steps you're doing, it's hard to do it. But that's because it's like I like it picking up the Bible and reading it and remembering every single word. You go to church and you talk to the priest, or we call them a
Hmm.
priest or the pastor. The pastor
Hmm.
understands the Bible. Like get the help. And as you said, that's don't go it alone, whatever way that
Hmm.
goes.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
exactly what you said. Whether it's it's a someone to help you with the business part of it, or someone to help you with the mindset part of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is that is that is a very typical business problem, and that's something I want to um you're not alone. You know,
Hmm. Yeah.
it's a bigger issue because I don't think as a coach, when you set up this business, your ambition was to be plastered all over Facebook and
Right.
Instagram and
Right.
social media. You're not a marketing head. You wanted
Yeah.
to work with people, and it's about getting in the trenches, literally, and having a fire side by side. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so wherever you find them, if it's me or if it's someone else, just to bring someone on board who can help you. And that would like I've seen it happen. The business becomes a life-changing business
Mm.
for thousands of people almost sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Imagine if the likes of Tony Robbins just stayed handling the only people he could handle. Like
Hmm.
he'd never have the multi, you know, he's touched millions of
Hmm.
people and changed lives and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's intimidating, but don't be intimidated by it.
You're right.
That's what I find. Um,
Yeah.
have you like I've kind of decided that I'm going to bring you back on again at another stage
Oh, great.
for a conversation because
Hmm.
you've a fair amount of business knowledge as far as I can tell. I was like listening and
Hmm.
like, oh, it was some sneaky. I'll prepare a better barrage of questions for you about helping retreat leaders create their business side of things and just get some more of that knowledge out of you and
Mm.
recorded and up on the interwebs so it can be found by the people that need it.
I
But
love it.
before we do go, have you any last bits of gossip or information or tales that you'd like to talk about from
Sure.
Jeremy?
Yeah. So, we talked about it before, and it was on my mind as you were sharing to make sure to talk about, and that is, well, it goes back to don't go alone. Like opening our hearts from a protection standpoint, to get past the ribs to the actual heart, allow people to, you know,
Mm,
to surrender. You might get hurt, right? You might get hurt. You might get burned. Somebody might take some of your content, right? Or whatever. But
mm,
without opening your heart, you are in that echo chamber that you've got to work on all by yourself, and you might have the greatest thing, like what I love your example of Tony Robbins, but if he didn't have that abundance mindset, if he wasn't open-hearted, then, you know, hey, he lived,
mm,
he was, did good for, 100 people, 500 people, but certainly he wouldn't have, it would have been a lot more challenging just to go alone. It's just not the way to go. So I do two things, and so I want to just share a little bit about those, which is the men's retreat, uh, and it's something that is more encompassing around the connecting by text as well. It's not just show up, howl at the moon and go home.
mm,
It's
mm,
uh it's a there's some continuity involved in it. And then also I do both for men and women a 30 days of do program. And so you can find me at 30 days of do on Instagram, Facebook, wherever, Twitter. Uh,
mm. Yeah, I love this particular program and the app you use, which is very
mm,
interesting, Marco Polo.
mhm.
It's
Yeah.
a fun little way to interact, and it's not just like it's not like you're just meeting on Zoom once a week. It's kind of a
Hmm.
super interactive. For me, it was a new thing. If anyone else, like, if you
Mm.
haven't heard of it out there, do you want to do a little 30-second promo of the
Sure.
Marco Polo app for people that might not know what
Well,
it
sure.
is?
Sure. So, I mean, we have 17 different time zones in the world, right? And
Mm,
so it's hard to schedule things, even with our fancy schedulers and all of that stuff. There's so much that can get lost, especially as a group. Trying to align everybody for 6 p.m. on Sunday evening is just a challenge. But by having, think if text and Zoom had a baby, right? So we could do a pre-recording 2 to 3 minutes or however long you'd like, of um, your your efforts and energy in a group, and then somebody else on the other side of the world, on the other side of the earth, at 2 o'clock in the morning is not going to be able to see your video, but it's recorded in there so they can watch it live if they're up at 2 o'clock in the morning. But if they're not, when they get up at 6, 7 a.m., they can listen to it and then provide you feedback. And then they can report in
Mm.
and do the same, and you can do the same on your time schedule. So if 5 o'clock in the afternoon you're in rush hour, or whatever, or riding the tube, whatever, you can actually just do a video there. Or if you're hiking and you wanted to share a rock with somebody, you can, hey, take a look at this, and it's just a great platform. We've been using it for 7 years or so, to just express, this is a cross section of my life. Please take a look and tell me what you think. So what we've done is we've used it for garage cleanings, right? So it's like, hey, take a space, 100 square foot space, and show us a before. Tell us what your plan is. And over the next 5 days, let's see it change and transition. And then the following day, give us a 2 to 3 minute segment around what you've done so far and what you're excited to do. And it just creates this flywheel effect. Because once I see your garage, I'm just talking as men here, once I see
Mhm.
your garage and see how it's shaping up, I'm going to get off of watching yours and get motivated to get out there and do mine so that I can do my video. And it creates
Mm.
this wonderful experience of just this positive energy that helps us to go faster and farther together than we could just alone.
Yeah, that is such a it's a I'm going to say it's a useful tool, and it's a useful tool for someone who would like to coach people, but it's also a very it's a great, as you're describing it, it's just such a nice platform to interact with people on in a kind of a group coaching set method. That's a nice little tool.
Mhm.
If I remember it, I will drop the link to the Marco Polo app in the video description, or
Excellent.
the wherever the description is for wherever you're listening to. And if it's not, you can find me and give out to me, and I will send you the link. What was that app Jeremy was talking about?
Mhm.
Um, that is that is so cool. As I said, I'm thinking maybe in a couple of months I'll have you back on when I have a bunch
Okay,
of questions uh from the
certainly.
business. So be prepared, Jeremy, to have a load
All
of
right.
questions sent your way from the viewers as well as myself. Um but thank you for having a chat. And yeah, 30 days of do, Facebook, Instagram, the interwebs,
Mhm.
all the huge. I think we're done.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Greatly appreciate it.